Good morning, everyone. So, welcome. This will be a nice presentation, a lecture by Sananjaleen about the Ascension of Heidi. It's a book that she published, and she has 4 books which are all on Amazon. But today she will focus on the Ascension of Heidi. I would like to introduce Sananjaleen as she was born in England and has a background as a professional horsewoman, and she traveled around the world many times, more than 3 times, and in many different countries. And what is interesting is her spiritual development is very unique and very original, filled with experiences in energy healing as well as animal communication. And this started with her beloved Gretel. When she died, she became her meditation mentor. And that's how we will start today. And the whole purpose and this whole experience, as Sananjaleen will talk about, has a way of communication, a way of telepathically telling how to teach people that animals have a purpose too, and to consider the evolutionary role of animals in the expansion of the human consciousness. This goes very well along with the teaching of the Master Ben Saduno. And there is a whole lecture in the harmonizing of the human soul. And the title is about our little brothers, the animals. And I warmly recommend it as well as Sananjaleen's book, which I think you have a chance. Some of you have read it already, but we are here, we are all excited to hear the wonderful sharing of Sananjaleen's experience and to hear more about how this whole animal communication started and the role of animals in the expansion of the human consciousness. So without further ado, Sananjaleen, please welcome. Please start.
Thank you, Nevenka. Thank you. And hello to everybody else. And thank you, Tana, for staying awake. And also, I'd like to mention Janice in the blue, because probably most of you have never met her. She was very encouraging when I was putting the book together, and she actually wrote the foreword. So anyway, I'm not quite sure what's going to come out of my mouth. I like to be super organized, and I have pages and pages that I was going to share, and now I've got the fan on, so the fan has blown my fist of paper all over the place. So anyway, over the years, I had 10 little miniature long-haired dachshunds. Dachshunds come in 6 different varieties. They come in miniature and standard, and they come in long hair, smooth hair, and wire-haired. So all mine were long-haired, which is very soft and beautiful. And as I say, over the years, I had 10 of them, not all at the same time. And most of them, well, practically all of them came from the same breeder. They had been show dogs, champion show dogs, and then they have a few puppies, and then they find a good home for them. And she discovered I was a good home, so every other year she would send me another one. So Gretel and Heidi were mother and daughter. And we are going to start with Gretel, but as a bit of a prelude, I wanted to explain why I call the book The Ascension of Heidi. Back in the early 90s, I used to attend a little metaphysical church where I was finally able to connect with like-minded people. And there was a set of audio tapes, cassette tapes going around at that time, 5 of them, and they were to do with Ascension. And those of us who listened to them believed them hook, line, and sinker, and we thought we were going to ascend, what I call a classic ascension, disappear at any moment. So we would listen to all these tapes and we'd be up in the middle of the night throwing out all the things we didn't need. Well, that didn't last long. We realized that ascension is a process. And to me, my current understanding what ascension means is it's an ongoing process to our highest potential. It's transition, transformation, it's change, an update in consciousness to a higher frequency. And so the book has many quotes, notes, and comments regarding this, plus comments from Peter Durnoff and Oramika Ivanov, which are related. And all of these quotes would enhance and confirm what the dogs had already told me. And sometimes the things they taught me, I really didn't, I had to look up some of the words in the dictionary. But anyway, the dogs were right. So I knew, although we realized that ascension was a process, I knew, just with the direct inner knowing, I knew that Heidi was going to do this, that when her time came to leave the earth, she would take her body with her. Well, I didn't know when it would be, and I didn't know how. And all my little dogs sleep on my bed, so I thought I would just wake up one morning and Heidi wouldn't be there. Well, it was nothing like that at all. But 2 years later, it was January and we had snow. We had a terrible, terrible ice storm. And so anyway, one evening, Heidi woke up and she was so excited. Gotta go out, Mom, gotta go out, gotta go out. So I let her out. And we'd had a light snowfall. We'd had a very light snowfall, so you could see footprints very, very clearly. Anyway, I let her out into the night and the 2 little dogs followed her, the other two. The other 2 came back very quickly and Heidi never came back. And I knew that she had gone. But we are programmed to look. We're programmed to look. So I put on all my snow clothes and my flashlight and I went out. There was a nice moon and I walked 2 times all around the garden. The footprints stopped in a certain area, not far from the house. They just stopped. They just simply stopped. And I thought, well, that's funny. I'll deal with that in the morning. Now I've got to look for Heidi because we just can't process things like that. Even though we know it's going to happen, I didn't think it would be like that. So anyway, so as the year went on, in a I call it a meditative state, because I would ask questions and I would always get these answers, profound answers, which I always wrote down and then typed up. And as the year went on, I asked Heidi, how'd you do that, Heidi? And what did you feel? And so all of these notes, I eventually, at the end of the year, I compiled them in a little stapled together booklet. And so this went out far and wide. And people started writing me and telling me that their animal had done it too. A hermit crab did it, a goldfish did it, as well as other dogs. Well, anyway, eventually we put this on Kindle. And then this year, it has been made into a whole book. And I thought the whole thing was a process. I thought the cover was all going to be in gold and silver and white and Ascension and all that kind of stuff. And but very quickly, I realized this now includes the story of all the other 9 little dachshunds and other animals and a lot of quotes. And I realized my focus now is not so much Ascension. That's going to happen anyway. My focus now is to share with people and bring awareness of the purpose, the real spiritual purpose of animals in our life. And Nevenka touched on this. Let's see if I had anything else. It's because they are so much more than just our pets. They demonstrate all these qualities like acceptance, surrender, forgiveness, patience, and joy. And these are all qualities that hopefully we will observe and understand and try and emulate. But above all, they give us the opportunity to give and receive love. And so how do I, when I say the dogs say this and the dogs say that, I receive it telepathically, like my own thinking. And certainly at that time, I would have to be in a meditative state with my pencil and paper and write everything down. So, oh, and the other thing, so sometimes I would get words, sometimes it would be like dictation. The words would come that fast. Other times I would get a feeling and I had to grope to put it in words myself. And also the big thing is animals, a lot of animals, especially those who come to us, the so-called light workers, they may not really be animals. They may be emanations or parts of great beings of light. They could be a part of our own high self, our angelic self, and they come in the form of a dog so that they can be with us and teach us and help us. And also a lot of my messages, when I say they come from the animal or through the animal, they do come from the animal. But when I say they come through, it might be a higher being than the little dog sitting in front of me speaking through them. And of course, the Native Americans, the indigenous people, are very, very familiar with this. If they would see a wolf or wild animal, they would understand that it was a message from spirit, and they could get a message through the wolf from a higher being. And one little example, a story I want to give about who are animals really. I do a bit of pet sitting, preferably having little dogs in my own house. There's one behind me right now, where she's on the couch now. But sometimes I go to other people's houses. And on this occasion, I was looking after two Afghan hounds. Afghan hounds are quite big and they're quite shaggy. And one of them was very, very old. And the owners were going off to Tibet. And they said they had told the vet, no theatrics. So they were sort of expecting the dog to die while they were gone. Well, it did. It died the first night they were gone. And it was too big for me to carry to the vet. So the vet came and collected it and looked after it for a while and then let it go. Well, anyway, that night, I had this little meditation and I wanted to ask the dog to give me a sign that it was all right. How was it? How are things with this dog? And in my mind, I saw an image of this dog's head. And as I said, it was very old. So I was astonished that the eyes were bright and beautiful and gorgeous. And as I stared at it, the eyes remained and the Afghan hound's face disappeared. And in its place was a picture of a picture of a little wizened Oriental man whom I called the wise man. I called him the wise man. And I heard a voice in my head say, why this voice? If a wise man wanted to experience life through the eyes of a dog, what better dog to pick? If he had picked a pampered pet, that's not a real life for a dog, a pampered pet. And if he had picked a stray on the streets, he would spend all his time looking for food. So anyway, I want to share a quote related to this. This quote comes from Omran Mikhail Ivanov, and it says, "It can also happen that highly evolved beings enter the body of a certain animal voluntarily in order to study the little known realm of the animal kingdom." And that is exactly the information I was given. So before we go on to Gretel, are there any questions or comments? Right, then we'll go to Gretel. Gretel was Heidi's mother, and Gretel loved everybody, and everybody loved Gretel. And so she was a normal, happy little dog. She loved children, children loved her, etc., etc. So she was 15 years old when she died, and she died peacefully in her sleep with the music playing, her friends visiting. And the thing is, 2 years before, she was very healthy, And I found myself looking at her and thinking, I wonder how Gretel will die. Well, this was a very strange thought. And I was aware that it was a very strange thought. So after a couple of hours, I thought, well, maybe I better do something about this strange thought. And at that time, this was the early 90s. Well, no, I guess it was the late 80s for Gretel. Um, I wasn't comfortable using the word God, and I wasn't comfortable using the word prayer. So I called it a request. And I made a request that when Gretel's time came, she would die peacefully in her sleep with the music playing and her friends around her. And it didn't matter if I was there or not, as long as she had friends, you know. And anyway, 2 years later, that is exactly what happened. Exactly. I had a previous commitment. I used to photograph weddings at that time, and I had to go out. She had woken up in the morning coughing, and I knew this was the day. So I had arranged for a couple of friends to come and visit her while I was gone, and they did. And when I came home, Gretel had gone. She was just lying there peacefully in her bed. So even a friend buried her. Next morning, we were trying to learn to meditate. We were at the point where we thought we were meditating, and you look at your watch. Oh, only sat here for 3 minutes. Oh dear. So anyway, I say that Gretel taught me to meditate. She gave me the discipline to focus morning and evening in a meditative state because of my love for her. Because my love for her was so great, I had to know what Gretel was doing. So this became the highlight of my day, morning and evening. And I didn't check in with her every day because I had read that there was a danger of keeping your loved ones earthbound. Well, over the years, I realized I don't think Gretel was in any danger of being earthbound. She was in charge. That would more apply to people's great grief and sorrow and wanting the person back, and that wasn't my case. But anyway, so the first meditation, I didn't know what to do, so I imagined her in a place she would like, which was I imagined her just in a nice setting with grass and water and flowers and sniffling around. And then I remembered she liked big dogs. So I asked a big dog to come. And then I realized I was going to have to end this meditation. What was I going to do with Gretel? I couldn't just leave her by herself. And then on the horizon, I saw a little cottage. And so in the cottage was a little old lady, and she explained that she was going to wait there until her dog on Earth died, and then they would go on together. So she said she would be happy for Gretel to stay with her as long as Gretel wanted to. So that's the way I left it. So anyway, I won't give you every individual meditation, but as the years went on, for 3 years, Gretel taught me in my meditations. She taught me all sorts of things. In the beginning, she came in and she was being her little Gretel. She looked like Gretel, and she was doing zoomies in the air. She was doing zoomies and turning around, and she was sort of swimming through the air. And finally, she took off and started swimming upwards in her little Gretel body. And I would share all these things with one or two friends. And they said, she's showing you she's free. And so then on another occasion, I was in my meditation, she was going at a sort of a steep 45-degree angle in front of me, and she was struggling. And I was very, very upset. I thought, oh, what have I done? What's happened to Gretel now? And she was obviously having a little struggle, and this went on, and I followed her. And up in the top left-hand corner of my mind was what I call the golden Gretel. And it was just a glorious golden Gretel. And this was her high self. And she was struggling up through the void to disappear. She went inside the golden Gretel. She had now become the golden Gretel. And over the years, in my mind, I had created a temple. And in this temple, when I would go there, there were all kinds of things in this temple. The ascended masters would come, fairies would come, the other dogs would come, and Gretel would come. And she seemed on familiar terms with everybody. the fairies loved riding on her back and sliding down her tail. And the ascended masters, sometimes they walked in following her, and sometimes she walked out following them. And anyway, the thing is, she would come in different ways. It would always be Gretel, but sometimes she would be in what I called her radiant body, or sometimes she would be in the golden Gretel body. Sometimes she would look like what I called her glass body or her crystal see-through body, because at that time I had never heard of the body of light and the crystal body and the diamond body and the body of glory. And she was teaching me all these things. And I thought that she was teaching me her spiritual evolution. And then I realized she was teaching me my spiritual unfoldment. She was teaching me all these things. And so anyway, on one occasion, she was there in this temple waiting for us. And so I wondered if she was there all the time. And I asked her if she got lonely when I didn't come, because I didn't go there every day. And I said, where are you all the time? What are you doing, Gretel? And she said, I await the unfoldment of my plan. Eventually, a door will open, a light will shine, a way will be shown, a path will reveal, and I shall choose to follow it, or I shall return to the light, the cause to which I have pledged my existence. This is my place to wait. So her reference to, or I shall return to the light, eventually, I don't want to skip a bit here. Eventually, there was no image of Gretel. So I thought I would imagine her anyway. And I asked her if there was anything I could do to help her. And a gentle but commanding voice in my head said, you cannot help me in the spirit world, for you are in the physical, but you can help on that level by preparing the way for my return. And I was totally overwhelmed by the feeling of love, because I realized it was the Christ speaking. And as time went on, I had this with other animals. They would talk, and then this overwhelming presence of the Christ would take over. And she continued speaking, and the feeling that this was the Christ speaking grew ever stronger. And I said, Gretel, you're speaking with such assurance and authority. And she said, oh yes, I have grown too. I am that I am. I too can focus the light and beam it far. So my mind really couldn't cope with this. And so I switched back to more mundane things, because at one time she had shown me, she had returned to the lower astral realm, and she was teaching the dogs to love the cat. She was teaching the cats and dogs to love each other, those that had been traumatized and killed by bad dogs. So I asked her, I said, Gretel, are you still doing that? And she said, this work is passing to others. I come at times to advise, to encourage. And then with ever greater gentleness, she said, I have returned to the light. And I saw and felt nothing but light. And the sense that where or what Gretel was now was totally incomprehensible to me. My mind was simply blown. And with great love and tenderness, as one would explain to a child, she said, I am no longer in my form as Gretel. And my friends accepted this unconditionally. They said, any questions we would ask Gretel, we now ask the Christ, because Gretel has become the Christ. Well, I wasn't too sure about that, but it certainly seemed as if she was either speaking through the Christ or the Christ was speaking through her. And I heard the words. Next morning I woke up to the words. I heard, Gretel now knew herself as an extension of the light and had access to all knowledge. So every time she would teach me something like that, I thought that was it. I thought, well, now I know everything. No need to meditate anymore. That's it. Well, of course, I couldn't leave Gretel alone. So eventually, I tried to connect with her again. And of course, I experienced a moment of panic because now I couldn't even remember what she looked like. I was very upset. And gently she explained, there is no reason to remember what I looked like, for I too have returned to the light. I too am that I am. And my mind was again filled with glory and brilliance, so great and so totally unexpected that I would just burst into tears. And anyway, this little chapel that I went to at that time, there were one or two people that I would share this story with. And one young lady, when I told her that story about how I couldn't remember what Gretel looked like, she said, oh, thank you, thank you. Because 3 weeks earlier, she couldn't remember what her grandmother looked like. And now she realized that her grandmother had moved on into the light and there was no reason to remember what she looked like anymore. So, and then just, I think, just one, two more Gretel stories. She was showing or doing me something, because even though she has returned to the light, you see, we're multidimensional beings. And after a certain time, she can reactivate the Gretel shell, or because the Gretel shell, the matrix of the body still remains. So the animals can still use it, even if it's not really them. So she was showing me that she was showing me that, like, that from her high self, she was sending out a stream of little Gretels. Stream of little Gretels was going out and doing work wherever they were needed. And so I wondered, how on earth could she do that? She gave me the image of her glorious gold and sending forth a stream of all these little Gretels wherever they were needed. So there was a Buddhist temple nearby and a friendly monk a couple of hours away. So I would go and share these Gretel stories with her. And when I told her that, the nun clasped her chest and said, oh, she's a little bodhisattva. So I had to go home and look that up. Well, a little bodhisattva is one who remains helping everybody until all life is free. And then the nun who gave classes in Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and she looked at me in awe and she said, that is a very advanced teaching. So Gretel was giving me all this. So anyway, then the last thing was one day in my meditation, this was 3 years later after she went, I suddenly experienced myself as a huge, huge, vast angel. I mean, I was ginormous. I was huge. And this happened all in the same moment. Opposite me was another huge, huge, vast, gigantic angel. And I realized this was my twin angel. And my twin angel had remained in spirit, so she could help me, because if she had come in, you know, we couldn't help each other on this plane, but she remained there to help me. And down at our feet was Gretel, looking gorgeous, dancing and prancing and turning herself inside out, doing handstands, because I finally got it when I said, oh, Gretel, you're not a dog at all, are you? You're an angel. So I would then share these stories, but I didn't tell people my dog is an angel because people raise an eyebrow. I would say, do you believe in angels? And they would say, yes. And I'd say, well, don't you think an angel can do anything it wants to? And reluctantly, they would say, well, yeah. And I would say, well, what about if an angel sent a teeny weeny little piece of itself in the form of a dog to bring me comfort and joy? So that's Gretel. And I thought that was the end. But years later, I saw this great shaft of light, this huge shaft of light reaching from the earth into infinity. And I heard that Gretel had become a way shower to the stars for the animal kingdoms. And if that isn't enough, 7 years later, a friend phoned me and said, did you ever have a dog called Gretel? Because I had stopped talking about her 7 years later. And I said, well, yeah. And she had had a dream. She had a dream that she was on a spaceship. And to cut the story short, the little green man who was showing her around they saw Gretel come onto the spaceship, and my friend Marilyn said, "That looks like one of Sananjaleen's little dogs." And the man said, the ET said, "Yes, that's Gretel. Would you like to see where she works?" And they followed her down a corridor, and there were rooms everywhere. And Gretel went into a room, and the man beckoned for Marilyn to come and look, see what she was doing. And the room was full of very sad and apathetic looking little children. And Gretel went into this room and immediately curled up in the lap of one of the little children so that it could hug her to her chest. And the man, little ET, said, "Yes, Gretel comes here every day. She's teaching them about love." Well, all this really wasn't my thing, but that's what Gretel was doing. And then for the last thing, last year on Easter Sunday, 30 years after Gretel went, it was Easter Sunday, and I was standing out in the garden doing my thing, and I saw the entire garden just became light, it just became glorious, glorious light, and I knew that this was Gretel's ascension flame. So that's Gretel. Any questions or comments? So then we'll move on to Heidi.
Maybe this is a good time to show some pictures.
That would be
Sananda,
great. That'd be great.
what do you think?
Especially those, yes, I do.
Yeah.
Especially those first ones.
Yes. Let me share my screen. I think what you impressed upon me is this idea of having a different shape, a different form, and also an angel becoming or taking the shape of a dog or any shape in order to convey its message. So here is our Gretel.
So that says Gretel, and the one with the bone is actually Heidi, but that's okay. That's Gretel walking across the bridge.
Okay.
She's walking across the bridge. There was a little stream it was the neighbor's garden, and one day there was rather a lot of water in the stream. So I showed her walk across the bridge, and after that she always walked across the bridge, although she loved water. And every day I had a friend with two other little dogs, and we would all go walking down by the river, and Gretel would just take herself in the water for swimming. Sometimes she'd give me fits because it was deeper than I could wade. And that's the neighbor's little dog on the right.
Okay, so that's
and that picture of Heidi on the left with the bone, she has been up the hill and stolen the coon dog's bone and come back with it.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, that's what we're
Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
So Heidi is Gretel's daughter.
Yes.
In this form.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. I also wanted to say in one of the lectures, the Master Ben Saduno says, animals are the alphabet of the animal kingdom. And we are also part of that huge kingdom, of that huge realm, being half human, but also half animal, meaning we are part of that big soul. And there is a quote in that lecture that I mentioned about our little brothers, when a sister inquired and said, what does the evolution consist in, and what are the factors of the evolution? And the Master Ben Saduno said the meaning of the evolution is for the divine spirit to work in all natural kingdoms, in all natural realms, mineral, vegetable, animal, and human. The meaning of evolution is to have ever higher forms created through which the divine spirit and the great talents, if the monad is to manifest in a perfect way. So the monad is that essence of our soul, the essence of our being. So that moment when you experienced the light all around you in your garden is the moment when you realize you're that essence. The divine spirit in the mineral manifests to a smaller degree, in the plant and the animal form to a bigger degree, and in the human form to an even bigger degree, whereas in the angelic form, even better, etc. In that, namely, is the meaning of evolution. Evolution is a fundamental law in the creation. And then only the factors of the evolution are different, not as the mechanical biology thinks or understands. They're the so-called psychic factors of the evolution. The outside conditions influence, but the way in which the organism, the body, reacts to the outside conditions is the psychic one, means it comes from that great monad that we carry, that we represent. And the subconsciousness works in the tissues, again, in the body. On the other hand, it is run by the monad of the body, of the organism itself, and on the other hand, by the advanced creatures. So it nicely complements your experience that you just shared with us.
Yes, thank you. That was perfect.
Yeah. And also, I think we have now the transition from Heidi to Tiggy, right?
Yes, I'm going to talk a little bit about Heidi first. She's the one on the right. Heidi was gorgeous. And Tiggy is the one on the left, because after Gretel went, Heidi was alone for a week, and she had never, ever been alone before. So a week after Heidi went, Tiggy joined us. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Heidi first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love breaking it up like that and having the confirmations.
Yes.
So anyway, so I've mentioned how Heidi did this, how Heidi ran out in the snow and disappeared. So, so the next morning, and so we're programmed to look. Even though I knew she had done this, I couldn't be sad, but we are programmed to look. And all during the night, every 2 hours, I would jump out of bed and go and look. I had 3 doors in the house. There's no stairs, it's all downstairs. So I would run around and look outside each door. I knew she wouldn't be there, and she wasn't. But anyway, so next morning, I phoned a couple of friends who knew she was going to do this, and they came over, and I still couldn't, it still couldn't be a reality in my mind. And so Kim, the wife, and I were sitting at the kitchen table, and I said, "Well, where's Jim?" And she said, "Well, he's out looking for Heidi." And I said, "Well, he won't find her." But the thing is, Jim came in, a 50-year-old man, and he stood in the doorway, and he said the exact same words that I had thought in my mind. There's some footprints out there that don't go anywhere. So anyway, after they went, I was looking through my bedroom window towards the place where she went. And normally I do not see things with my eyes open. And so in my mind, I said, "How did you do that, Heidi?" And in my mind, I saw her standing there in the moonlight in the snow. And above and around her was this little beam of light. It was just a Heidi. I suppose it was about 3 foot tall. And somebody said it was probably her Merkaba. But anyway, as time went on, I would ask all these questions about what she had experienced. And So one day I asked her what she had felt. Well, I asked her if she could let me feel I figured what it was, but anyway, I asked her if she could give me the feeling she had experienced. So I'm sitting there on my front deck with Tiggy beside me, and you know how beautiful it feels if you're just sitting there with the sun shining on you. It just feels beautiful. And I could have sat there all morning, but before I could do that, I felt this rays of the sun penetrating me 360 degrees. Every cell and molecule of my being was being bathed in this sunlight. It was the most incredible feeling, and I could have sat there forever. But that didn't last long either. I then felt every part and particle of me expanding out and out and out, 360 degrees, out and out. And in my meditations, I know enough to, when I wonder, part of me is wondering, how is this going to end? But part of me knows to stay with it and see where it goes. So I did. I stayed with it until I was nothingness. Heidi had expanded in all directions until she became a point of infinite consciousness. And so, again, as time went on, I was given, well, how did that happen? So I was told that Heidi's her molecules spun at such a mathematical frequency of finesse, they accelerated her bodily parts into a higher dimension. Every part and particle, every molecule, atom, and subatomic electron of her being was accelerated at a vibratory spin so fast that they became pure energy. This is the warmth that you and she experienced. They continued to spin ever faster at a frequency you cannot imagine. This was the expansion into the beyond and beyond and beyond. They spun faster than the speed of light. They passed through light and expanded beyond all boundaries into the infinite beyond. Heidi had fast forwarded herself into infinity. And then I don't know if any of you have seen William Henry. He's on Ancient Aliens a lot, and he's quite well known. Well, we were both sharing at the same conference once, so I told him the Heidi story, and I have his quote in the book. He said, Heidi was light slowed down. And the same with Dan Winter, who is an incredible, I guess he's a physicist. Dan, if you see him on Facebook, he's just totally mind-boggling what he shares about sacred geometry. And I had told him the same story. I actually didn't know it was Dan Winter when I was telling him the story. And he said Heidi was the perfect wave, a direct transmission of light taken to God consciousness. So Heidi also obviously taught me a whole lot of things, which are all in the book. But Heidi also experienced a couple of miracles health-wise, because she wasn't supposed to go at the time. She had her teeth cleaned at the vet, and she never really regained consciousness. She regained consciousness enough that they let me take her home, but I was sitting with her in my lap all evening, and I knew she wasn't really in there. And anyway, I kept sending her my love. And I said, whatever she wanted to do was okay with me. But if she wanted to go, she went with my love. But if she would stay, it would make me so, so happy. And this went on for about 3 hours. And then I had my hands on her, obviously, and nothing moved. But underneath my hands, I felt the most incredible something. And I knew she had returned to her body. And so anyway, the next morning she was fine. But if she had spent the night at the vet, you see, she would have gone on out there. Oh, sorry, your dog died in the night, And on another occasion, she had, I don't take my dogs to the vet unless I can possibly avoid it, but I forget. I think her back was hurting. I forget. I took her to the vet, and when she came home, she couldn't move. You could see the pain in her eye, and she was in agony. And so I said, Heidi, what did they do to you? And she flashed me an image of her being held down on her back on a stainless steel table while they took an x-ray. Now, some dogs can lie on their back quite comfortably, but Heidi couldn't. She had a kind of protruding spine, and this would have been excruciating for her. So anyway, I didn't know what to do. And so, but I remembered that there was a Reiki group that met at the chapel, which is about 30 miles away. I remember that they had a Reiki healing group that night. So I phoned the coordinator and I said, would you all send love and energy to Heidi? And they all knew me and my stories, and she said, bring her. So I took Heidi, and there was a friend sitting on the couch, and she patted the seat beside her, and I sat with Heidi between us, and we both put a hand on Heidi, and the Reiki group discussed how they were going to do this, and they stood in a circle. So everybody was touching one person with their hand, and the other hand was directed towards Heidi. And she was 100% healed, 100%. The woman and I holding her hands knew this, they knew this. And then when it was finished, they knew she was healed, and they all broke up and they were chatting. And I'm sitting there like a zombie because it didn't seem right to put Heidi on the floor. And I didn't know how I was going to go home. And so one of them came up to me and she said, you are to carry Heidi home the way you carried her in, which I had carried her like this. I had carried it in my arms like this. So I stood up smiling and held her like that in my arms, and they all made a corridor, and we walked her through the corridor, and I put her carefully in the car, put her in the back of the car, and all the way home, I heard her bouncing around and barking. The next morning in bed, she jumped off the bed and off she went. So her time had not come. And that makes me think, I'm just rereading. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a wonderful, wonderful paperback called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. It's just, I have it by my bedside and I read it every night. And a lot of the same stories we know, but some of them have a slightly different perspective and a lot more other stuff too. And I was just reading the part where they're all worried about him going into Jerusalem. And he keeps saying, my time has not yet come. And it's just, I thought of that now with Heidi. So anyway, we will now move on to Tiggy. When Tiggy came, Tiggy, we called Tiggy, I don't know why, but I called her the furry fairy. I always called her the furry fairy. And I made up this thing that Tiggy came from the fairy kingdoms. Well, she did, I guess. And she was just joy. She was so happy. She had spent 7 years in kennels. She'd never run loose in a garden. And so she ran everywhere at top speed, everywhere, all at the same time. She ran so fast, I used to call her she who raced the wind. Well, she also taught Heidi to go hunting. I used to take them for walks down by the river, and Gretel and Heidi never, ever went anywhere they shouldn't. But Tiggy taught Heidi to go off and round about, so they would not be with me when it was time to go home. So indirectly, they taught me to trust my inner voice, my inner knowing, my inner guidance, because I would sit in the car distraught and ask and plead, what do I do now? And a voice in my head would say, they'll be back in 20 minutes. And they were. And this continued all summer. It continued. And sometimes they would tell me which dog would be in front. And they were always right. And then on one occasion, they didn't come back in the 20 minutes. And they didn't come back, and they didn't come back. And so, but I so trusted my inner guidance by this time that I went home and I said, well, tell me when to go back and get them. And that happened. They eventually said, they're waiting for you now. And I went back and there they were. And so I said, because now, of course, I doubt, was that information wrong? And they said, no, that was right as it was. But in between the 20 minutes, Tiggy found a bunny rabbit. And in between giving me the 20 minutes, she had found a bunny rabbit, so they'd gone off on another search and hunt. So from that, I learned, and I still do this, I learned when I ask questions about anything, anything at all, I have learned to prefix my question with, as things are now. Because if you're asking about something in the future, it could change from the present moment when you're given the answer. So they're my teachers all the time. And oh yes, so Tiggy and Heidi, they would lie close together. They would lie with their heads on each other. Tiggy would lie with her head on Heidi's tummy, or they'd lie back to back or whatever. And she said that Heidi was teaching her to sync their heartbeats, to breathe as one, so that Heidi would take her interdimensionally traveling to the places that she went. And so I asked her about these places, and she said, oh, they were very wondrous. They were very exciting, but she couldn't really tell me about them. She said, it's like when you wake up from a wonderful dream, you know you had a wonderful dream, and you can sort of remember the gist of it, but you really can't remember it. She said, it's like that. So anyway, after Heidi went, one day, I asked Tiggy if she went traveling to these exciting, wondrous places by herself that Heidi took her, and she was kind of shocked. She said, oh no. She said, oh no. Heidi told me never to go traveling there by myself. It would be too dangerous. I may not be able to come back. And if Nevenka, we know we have a Peter Durnoff quote on that. Have we lost Nevenka? Well, anyway, I did have I had a Omar Mikhail Ivanov quote on that, who warned about the dangers of interdimensional travel without protection, that you must always protect yourself in whatever way you normally do that. And of course, Peter Durnoff said the same thing. And Nevenka, are you there?
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about the interdimensional travel and the dangers? Because Tiggy said Heidi told her never to go there by herself.
Yeah, there are many meditations that Peter Danov has given, Ben Sadunov has given, and usually there is a great description of how to do that meditation. And if you're doing it alone, he usually gave these meditations in his classes, and gave them as homework. And he actually gave one such meditation in the lecture, "The Dark Spot of Consciousness," and this was part of the daily reflections on July 31st. I will tell you a little bit more, and we can probably also do this, because I'm really inspired with how you developed through your meditations and your experiences to have that moment of light in the garden. But in all of these meditations, to have some kind of a goal of how to go somewhere and come back. I think we, on this virtual call, we've done meditations to go to the sun and come back. And these experiences, so how to go to the light and come back, right? So this is very delicate, and it's a very personal experience that we can share afterwards. But the one that I wanted to share for today is the 31st thought for every day, 31st of July. And it's about how we grow and how we evolve, and learning from animals as part of the great school of life, as part of our purpose and evolution. Um, this quote is in that sense. So it says, now those of you listening sometimes display the ordinary moral tendency to criticize, which is, the rational mind is working not only with this dimension of reality that we see, but also working, the soul is trying to work on higher levels. So now, this is the moral stance which is common in the world, but it won't lead to personal or collective improvement in our school of life. We should have the desire to, and this is when we are alone and trying to meditate, to mentally embrace all our friends, all our brothers and sisters, sending them divine thought from a great teacher. So just like Gretel and Heidi were your teachers, were your spiritual mentors. So to have a divine thought from a great teacher, in whichever form this teacher shows to you, manifests to you, and extend to them, meaning to your friends, brothers and sisters, a good wish from this great teacher, from the great Lord of love, and bestow upon them a blessing from that great spirit of truth. So deep in your soul, to sincerely wish for each of them to possess the same blessings you have. So, Sananjaleen, through your experience, when you talked about the light in the garden, I feel like I saw maybe a glimpse of it, but now I have that tendency to have that experience, to aspire and to elevate them and envision their faces illuminating with joy, just like you described the joy that Tiggy brought as a furry fairy to you. Yeah. Maybe we can show some pictures.
Yes, that'd be great.
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Beautiful. Okay. Here we go. So this was Tiggy and Heidi, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Tiggy was she who raced the wind.
And here is a bigger.
And that's Tiggy when she's 1 week short of 18 years old. That was just one of her last days. And we called her the Wisdom Elder. Everybody called her the Wisdom Elder. Because we had these, no, you go on.
There is a little rainbow.
Yes, exactly.
I like how it goes from red closer to her to the ultraviolet. So really radiating.
It comes from one of the crystals in the window.
Uh-huh. But it shows the right thing.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I will tell an interesting story while that photo is up here. And we used to have these little animal communication play days. And one of the exercises, I forget it was, we were doing a meditation. Anyway, for those of you who know what an Afghan hound looks like, it's very similar to Tiggy's face here. So anyway, in my meditation, in this course, when we came out, I said, "Well, my goodness, I was a young sheik in the desert, like I was doing my vision quest, and I was all alone in the desert, except for my Afghan, my hawk, and my cheetah. And when I shared that, they all looked at Tiggy and said, 'There's your Afghan.'"
That's amazing.
Hmm.
And also we have the story about the
And he,
girl and Tiggy.
yes, we do. Well, this is a story. This very, very beautiful young girl. I'm not going to mention her name for privacy, but she was a very, very well known actress with a very big movie company. She was in a lot of films you probably knew. And that's her mother holding Tiggy. And they stayed here. She and her mother stayed here for 3 nights. They were going to an event nearby that teaching them to make flower essences, and I used to do an unofficial bed and breakfast. So anyway, we all three totally bonded, and the people she worked with paid for her to have lessons in whatever she wanted. So she was also a very, very good artist. And when she left, she sent me pictures she had drawn of the dogs and so on and so forth. But anyway, um, to jump ahead, when Tiggy was preparing to go, she told me that she wanted me to alert all her friends, and she was nearly 18 years old, so she had a lot of friends. She wanted me to alert them all because she had a last message for all of them. It wasn't a goodbye. She had a last life message for all of them. So this kept me busy all winter because I told everybody to tell me their experiences so that I could write them all up. And a few of them are in the book, not many. So she went to everybody. She either went to them in their meditative state or she went to them in their dreams. And she went to this young girl in her dream. Her mother phoned and told me all about it. And in true life, they were at a crossroads. She was now, I don't know, maybe she was 18 or 19, I'm not quite sure. And they were a very, very close family, and she lived at home with her family. And the company she worked for wanted her to leave home and grow up and get sophisticated and be more like the roles they wanted her to play in future, not be so sweet. And from what we know now about some of these movie companies, Tiggy actually did save her life because in the dream, well, they interpreted in the dream she saw a little old lady in a cottage in the woods, and she went to the little old lady had a dog that she adored, and she wanted her to take the dog out into the woods and kill it, and blah blah blah. And in the dream, the girl realized that this dog was being represented as Tiggy, and to take it out into the woods, she discussed all this with their mother, and they put it together. And that to take this dog out in the woods and to kill it, but to leave home, to go out on her own, would be killing her joy. So she said no and lived happily ever after. And as I say, from what some of us know,
That's really amazing.
Tiggy really did save her life.
Story.
And while we were on those dreams, another young woman who had visited here in the house in Tiggy, she had gone back to England and she had written Tiggy a 2-page letter on her love life, and she wanted Tiggy's input on her love life.
Okay. Yeah.
Gosh, how does Tiggy know what to say about her love life? Tiggy gave her 2 words: marry him. So that was Tiggy's answer. And yeah, so you move on to Virginia Toad.
Yes. Okay.
So this is Virginia Toad, which was right outside the front door. And at that time, every morning, Tiggy and Heidi and I would sit out on my front porch and have coffee with an oatmeal raisin sunflower seed organic muffin. And Virginia would be with us because Virginia lived in a parsley plant, which was right there. And sometimes she was just coming back from her night out and she hadn't got into her parsley plant yet. And when she went in the parsley plant, I would water her. But anyway, Virginia was a very fine girl, and she used to let me pick her up and stroke her. And at night, it was really, really funny because the 2 little dogs, Heidi and Tiggy, would be run up the steps to come in the front door. So they would be standing there side by side, ready to come in the front door. And in the middle of them would be Virginia Toad facing the other way, going out for the night. And on one occasion, when we were having our coffee, Virginia was still beside us, and Tiggy sat on her. But Virginia didn't. So Virginia was quite famous. People came from quite a distance to visit with her. I said she was a star commander on a starship.
Okay. Maybe, Sananjaleen, at this point, we can ask if people want to ask you a question or share a similar experience or a moment from their life.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I also like that story when you gave a kiss.
Oh, yeah, well, because I had a big thing about Virginia Toad, the next year she didn't come back. And I was walking, it was early spring, I was walking in Sky Meadow State Park, which is 10 miles down the road. And I met this beautiful toad sitting in the middle of the pathway. So I picked him up and I told him how beautiful he was. And I kissed him on the nose and I told him he was my Prince Charming. And I put him down and I said, "There, how do you feel now?" And the voice in my head said he felt as if he'd just been abducted by an alien.
Okay.
Well, I'll speak.
Okay.
Okay, I have read hundreds of spiritual books, and can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have been an off and on spiritual teacher myself. And I will say that my connection with Sananjaleen during the last 2 years or so of writing this book and reading it and being there when she's writing this and learning everything and writing and hearing the stories and all of this has been one of the greatest honors of my life. And I almost come into tears about this because I thought I knew so much. And in reading these stories, not only has my consciousness been incredibly expanded with new concepts and new understandings, but I have been healed in a number of ways. My traumas, some of my regrets in my life, to be in touch with the incredible unconditional love that these angels are pouring out. And I was in Sananjaleen's living room one day and I saw a picture and it was just, it's just reached me. It just threw itself out to me. And that was Loreli, the dog Loreli, who has become my comrade. She teaches me. We're in connection. She's strong. She wants you to do your best. She wants you to find your mission, but she's also a total loving and fun character. And I just, it's changed my life because I have a whole different attitude, not only for animals, but for people, because each one of these dogs have a different personality and a different mission. And they know what their mission is and they know why they're here. And it makes me look at other people that are very different from me and think, oh, they have a different mission, just like the dogs. It's not something I just accepted before. And it's just the incredible wisdom of them and the incredible love. And all you have to do is open to it. And since starting to read this book and be involved with this book, I'm now communicating with animals. I mean, okay, they all have consciousness. they all understand their mission. And for example, there was a snake that came along our here in Texas. There's a lot of snakes. Came across my yard. I was standing there, and I immediately knew this was a girl, and I named her immediately, Lola. And she looked at me, and I said, "I'm afraid of you. Help me." And there was this something that happened. I was not afraid of her anymore. I loved her. And when we're out in our deck and outside in having meals, my husband and I, and bees and wasps and mosquitoes come along, I speak to them and ask them to follow me away. And they do every time. And so this book has changed my life. And I'm just grateful, Sananjaleen, for it. And I really hope everybody reads it because it's so impactful. That's my story.
Thank you,
Thank you
Janice.
for sharing. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I can share that for me, cats were those support friends, support animals. I actually never experienced them as animals. Every time they look at me, you know, with that look that a cat has, it's like, why are you here and what are you doing? And are you sure you're doing the right thing? So to me, that's kind of a reminder of the interdimensionality of life. And to your point, Janice, that other people have their own life, that they're walking in their own shoes, they're fulfilling their own uh, karma and dharma, and they have a different path. But when I get that interaction with my cats, I feel I'm instantly on a different level. That there is something out there that reminds me that it's not just the little things I'm focused in these three dimensions that we see and touch right now, but there is something sublime and conscious that's out there in the many dimensions of life, and to connect to experiences, but also to ask, okay, yes, this is infinite, but what do we need to do now? What do we need to do today? Uh, and and please envelop me with knowledge to do what I need to do now. So that's personal sharing from me. Anyone else who would like to share something? Or should we continue, Sananjaleen, with Loreli? I can show the picture of Loreli.
Okay.
Let's do this. Yeah, here's Loreli.
And that's the picture that Janice is talking about.
Uh-huh.
And it is an extraordinary picture. This, I had it made into postcards, and this picture is on people's refrigerators around the world. It's just extraordinary. And Lorelei set that up. I just had the feeling to turn around and take the picture, and there it was. And so that's Lorelei. She ruled, and that's Lorelei. This was extraordinary. I don't know how this woman, she's quite well known. She lives in Glastonbury, England, and she goes around the world doing energy healing at sacred sites. Anyway, I don't know how she ended up in my garden. And Lorelei did not go and to people friendly like this. And I turned around and here these two are. It's sort of instant recognition. It really was amazing. Because Lorelei did not look at people like that. And Lorelei was 7 years old when she came here. She was a champion of champions in the show ring. And then she had puppies, which must have been about the size of little mice. And then she came here. And Lorelei thrived on secrets and excitements. If anybody came to the door, she would rush through the house saying, the aliens are coming, the aliens are coming. Well, after a while, we realized she was the alien, and we always called her our little ET. And one day when I was sitting down, she came up and she touched my arm with her little paw and looked into my eyes. She had done this to my friend Jim, who I mentioned had been out looking for Heidi's footprints. She did this to him one day. He was just sitting, we were getting ready for our meditation group, and she went up to him and she put her paw on his knee, and he burst into tears. And when she put her paw on my knee, I immediately felt something. And to cut the story short, I heard these words, no dog is this one. From the far, far distant stars distant, she comes to assist, as all have come to assist. We want to help too. And we sent our finest and our best and purest of heart to dwell among you and raise your consciousness by our presence through feeling our love. And so great was the love that I felt that tears of overwhelm flowed copiously down my cheeks. So Lorelei ruled. Lorelei ruled all our workshops. We had these animal communication play days, and Lorelei took charge. She showed me, she gave me the exercises, what to do. She losing my track here. Oh, yeah, I know. I was going to tell you about if things. I'm usually pretty good at keeping things on track, but if things got out of track, like I couldn't stop people talking, Lorelei would get up from one of her little beds, and she would just trot backwards in front of me, turning around, trotting back again, with her eyes never leaving my face. And I would hold up my hand and say, "Hush up, everybody. Lorelei has something to say." Well, the thing is, everybody could see this, and everybody respected Lorelei. And we were always quoting what Lorelei said. The funny story here was one woman wanted to come to one of these, I called them play days. And I told her it had been canceled because everybody else had dropped out. And I couldn't give it for one person. The point is to get feedback from each other. So anyway, she kept saying she had to come, she'd pay for the whole workshop. I said, no, that's not the point. And so anyway, finally I said, okay, she could come and we would just talk for a couple of hours in the morning. So she did that. And what had happened, her pet goose had died, and she was so distraught. She carried on and on about this pet goose and all the things the goose did, and on and on. And I didn't know how to stop her. I was totally resigned to sitting there for the next 2 hours listening to this goose. So then Lorelei took charge. Lorelei got up from her little bed and she trotted backwards and forwards in front of me. And I touched the woman on the arm and I said, Lorelei has something to say. And the woman stopped mid-sentence. And what I always think, how do I know what Lorelei wants to say? Well, the words that came into my head were, there's more to life than geese. And to her credit, this woman started laughing. So you see, she went home heels laughing. And I also wanted to throw in one last story about Tiggy, because Tiggy gave a lesson in forgiveness. I knew before she came to me, she'd had a traumatic background. And one day I asked her about that, if she would tell me about that. And she said, there is no reason to remember. That was another's dream. I am on the path of love and shall not leave. So that's a one way of thinking of forgiveness. That was another's dream. So anyway, to try and speed things up a bit here, Lorelei, of course, did a great many things in her life, but the day came her day came when she had a very, very fast growing abdominal tumor. And the vet gave me 1 week to choose the day to let her go before it burst. So anyway, like Tiggy, Loreli wanted me to alert all her friends coast to coast. She wanted us to hold a meditation, a vigil, on Friday night, which was that night or the next night, at 9 p.m., coast to coast. Everybody was to light a candle and hold the image of Loreli dancing in the light. So she was 14 years old, and I wondered if she was going to have a miraculous healing, but that wasn't the case. So anyway, I alerted everybody like she told me to. It turns out she wanted to demonstrate the power of prayer. What she was doing was she was creating a portal with everybody meditating. She was opening or creating a portal to take many, many animals with her through this light. And so we did that, and I obviously cut. There's a whole lot in the book about this particular meditation. And I had a friend staying, and she was seeing incredible light, and she was seeing Mother Mary, and the whole thing was absolutely dramatic. I think these were the animals that she took with her was from some dreadful catastrophe that had been, and they were all coming and being released through the vortex, the portals here at Sananda into the light. And so anyway, after she went, and I'm wondering, where is Loreli? She showed me an image of a diving board out in the middle of the ocean, just this diving board, and there's Loreli standing on it. And she told me that she was keeping her body. She liked her little body, and she was updating and remodeling it so that she could swim underwater with the dolphins. And she should be taking a nosedive off the end of the diving board so she could go swimming with the dolphins. And there's a lot more to that too. It turned out in another big meditation that she was a whole lot of things, and she's also a cosmic dolphin. And she said, yes, I am a cosmic dolphin, but I'm also the wave. So there's no end to what Loreli does. But after she went, for about 6 months after she went, I had a lot of telephone calls from people who are crying. They would be telling me about their little dog that had died or was dying. They had either started off by saying, this little dachshund came into my dream, and somehow they got in contact with me. Or she and Tiggy do have their photo in a book called Communicating with Animals. And more than one person has told me they've been into a bookshop and this book falls on the floor, open at the page with Loreli and Tiggy's photo on it. And the thing is, Loreli has told me that she works with anybody who has seen her face or heard her name. So you better all watch out. She said, Tiggy only works with those who ask. But anyway, so anyway, all these people. So I was sort of, after a while, I cut through and I said, did your little dog die of a tumor? Is your little dog a dachshund? And the answer was always yes. And they all thought I was psychic. Well, no, I'm not psychic. I just know Loreli very well. And she was going into their dreams. And I asked her, what is she doing? And she said, I'm activating people. She said, they all need activating. I work with them in their dream state. There are only a few who can work with me consciously. I work with all who have ever heard my name or seen my face. That gives me entrance to their energy field. And they are like gardens. Some need water and encouragement. Others have seeds they have forgotten or don't know how to plant. I help them. And so she's helping Janice, eh?
Definitely. And every day, practically.
So anyway, I also woke up one morning to the words that Loreli was a multidimensional being with full consciousness of this. And of course, there's a lot more, but we will move on to Lorna. And Lorna, she also had been a champion in the show rings, which means they're quite well known in the dachshund world. And Lorna was she just programmed me to believe she was nothing but sweet and good. I thought she was so sweet and good, I almost thought she was boring. Baloney. She was a con man. She was an absolute con. She even conned one person who was on the telephone into thinking she was a cat. And another woman, a friend who was staying here while I was away, when I came back, she was full of how Lorna had been rescued from a circus. I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, Lorna told me she was rescued from a circus. It was all absolute baloney. And so anyway, Lorna did not talk to me. Mostly Lorna did not talk to me. And every time over the years, when I would wail, why won't Lorna talk to me? I heard the words, Lorna teaches in silence. Lorna teaches in silence. She was teaching me to learn to go direct to my inner knowing instead of going through the dogs all the time. But anyway, both continued. And so then on one occasion when we had had a very difficult time in the news, I don't know, there was a lot of killing, or I think it might have been 9/11. So anyway, I asked her if she could give me words of encouragement that I could share with others. And I thought this was so beautiful. She said, if we find it too hard to love everybody, just love the mothers and contemplate what a mother's love represents. So then we will move on to the arrival of Lilly. Lilly was her daughter, and Lily's arrival was the end of our piece. Like Tiggy, Lilly ran everywhere, but Lilly also, every time I bend down to do up my shoelaces, Lilly would come rushing over to help me do up my shoelaces. So I took to putting my foot up on the table, and Lilly would simply jump in a chair and get up on the table and come racing down the table, and she'd still get my shoelaces. So the big thing about Lilly is she had only been here a couple of days. I had a very good Cherokee friend, Native American, called Spirit Song, and she was in Texas, and we had never met, but we spent a great deal of time on the telephone because all my dogs, nearly all of them, well, no, some of them, went to her in her dream state, Loreli particularly. Loreli and Tiggy particularly went to her in her dream state, and she could describe them exactly, even though she had never seen them. So anyway, the thing is, Lilly, she phoned me and she said that Lilly had come to her in her dream state and said, I'm all brand new. The light workers created me. Well, we had no idea what that meant. And every time Spirit Song asked her, what do you mean? She said, I don't know. I'm all brand new. So as time went on, I asked in a meditative state, what does this mean? So I heard, the light workers created a format or thought form through which one such as Lilly could express. Portions of the God force that are all brand new, pristine in composition, can come and be a structure through which new geometries of existence may express. You could say she is angelic by nature or essence in composition. And when she was in hospital being spayed before she came to me, there was a bit of a switch or changeover in the energies of her geometric matrix. She bears the tone of a song unsung, the dream of a world unborn. She is here to remind us to create in joy, to live each moment in wonder. And I knew that Lilly was sent from the future. Her purpose was to collect Lorna, her mother, and bring her home, to ensure that Lorna returned to spirit to be where she was needed on time. Lilly was never intended to become a part of the ongoing structure. So anyway, what happened, because of her ability to jump up on tables, we had gone to visit the dog's grandmother, and to cut the story really short, I had left them for 20 minutes, half an hour, so that the lady could enjoy having them as her own little dogs. I did this every week. And Lilly had jumped up on the table and knocked a box of chocolates onto the floor. Well, chocolate is poison for dogs. So you see, that was her mission, to bring Lorna home. Lorna was 16. She was in fabulous condition, fabulous. There was no gray hairs on Lorna, but it was not intended for her to grow old. And she was needed in spirit. So Lilly came to bring her home. And what Lilly learned, because so then I would obviously check in with them. And what I felt from Lilly, I felt that Lilly was part of an angelic group working with those in transition. And to fully know how best to help, they must experience this for herself. And I felt her wonder at the love and care and concern that was offered to her little body at the veterinary clinic. They even closed the clinic saying, we have a 2 dachshund emergency. Part of Lilly marveled at this outpouring of love, and part of her marveled at how attached humans are to the physical form, which is so temporary. Their lack of understanding and realizing that when the body has completed its function to house the spirit, it is time to let it go, not try and force it to stay longer. She was both the observer and the experiencer. Knowing the emotions of receiving all this love and care, Lilly had expanded the understanding and ability of her group to assist others. And when I tried to connect with Lorna, I just felt light. I just felt total light. And I heard Lorna is deep within the heart of love. And then with Lilly, I asked about Lilly, and I heard Lilly has returned to the heart of the mother. She adored her mother, Gretel. She just adored her. And I do have another Peter Durnoff quote. At one point, but let me, oh, wait a minute. Okay, but I did have from a friend who heard me say about Lilly and the geometries. And this friend the dogs used to go and visit her. She lived in Florida. And she said, Lilly comes as patterns of light geometries, an abstract dachshund, because she is made of light and energy, free-flowing and everywhere. And one day, the 3 little dogs were sitting in a chair, and sort of mindlessly, I asked them, what is the meaning of life? And immediately Lilly responded, me, capital M. It's all about me, capital M. I am the meaning of life. And then much later, I read this quote by the master Peter Durnoff, who said, to respect yourself is to see the meaning of life. So we'll move on to Candace.
Should
Yes,
we
Rebecca.
first see some pictures?
Yes, and
Yes,
I'm going
we
to
give you-
pee.
Okay. So Lorna and Lilly, the sacred geometries, but now from the plant world and only by matching. And I think this is the few pictures of Lorna and Lilly that Sananjaleen shared with us. And I think these kind of answers that we get, what is the meaning of life, and it's me. At some point when you meditate, you come to this great question, who am I? And the other one is, what is the meaning of life? So in whichever shape and form this answer comes to us, in a guided or a form that comes after a lot of asking of the same question, you can feel when that answer really reveals itself to your soul. And it doesn't have to be in the same way for every single one of us or in that order. Sometimes it can be just in these moments, as Sananjaleen shared, after a lot of meditation and a lot of communication with her mentors in this case. And it's sometimes in a moment of joy that we can experience this.
Is that a rabbit, Nevenka, in the picture?
The rabbit,
The white animal on top of the dog?
Oh, it's an empty bag of birdseed. And Lorna is looking, hoping there might be something in there to eat. It's an empty bag of birdseed.
it looks so mischievous.
And the previous picture of Lilly eating the cucumber, I had to put a fence around the garden. You see, I put a fence around the garden to keep the dogs out, but the cucumber grew over the edge and Lilly found it and she ate the whole thing.
So who says that they're carnivores?
Right.
They like
No.
cucumbers so much.
Oh, they do. They would go and help themselves to the green beans and the zucchinis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gretel would pull the little baby carrots up and eat the carrots.
I had a cat that was total vegetarian. She didn't eat meat. She
Wow.
ate peppers, bread, and the usual Balkan food, which is a lot of beans and things like that, and just wouldn't eat fish, wouldn't eat anything else.
Wow.
So yeah, I believe in the cucumber attachment. Yeah. And these are also
Yeah, that's
Lorna.
Lilly and the cucumber. And this beautiful photo, bottom right, is of Lorna when she was 16 years old. I took them, I said I took them on a field trip. So that's Lorna when she was 16 years old. She was incredible. Not a gray hair on her.
Wow. Well, she lived in the light, so
Yes.
so Lilly is the one with the cucumber.
Yes. And at the bottom, your bottom, see where she first found it? It's one of those beautiful long Asian cucumbers. They're very, very tasty. They don't really have seeds.
Mm. She had great taste. Okay. So would you like to continue?
Yes, okay.
Candace? Yeah.
So I will move on to, and also Gretel was buried by the plumber who was her friend. Heidi took her body with her. For all the other 8 little dachshunds, we used to have these beautiful ceremonies. And we had these beautiful ceremonies of life, and about 6 or 7 of their friends would come, and we'd just make beautiful ceremonies. And then, well, anyway, I'll get back to that maybe. So anyway, next to come was Candace. And Candace was an empath. Candace could feel everything. So, but the first thing that happened with Candace, she was supposed to arrive. She was 5 years old when she was arrived. She was very, very gorgeous. She was very beautiful, but she was too shy, or she didn't have the temperament to be a show dog. So she was allowed to come to me when she was 5 years old, but she had puppies. And when I asked for them to tell me stories about Candace, as I say, she was an empath. And where she used to live, the woman said that she used to let them out in the evening to run down to the pond, and all the other little dogs chased the frogs, but Candace wouldn't chase the frogs. And when she had her puppies, when her puppies cried, she would sit in the middle and cry with them. So anyway, one of the first things Candace did when she arrived, she was supposed to arrive during this animal communication play day we were having, and everybody was hanging on and waiting for her to arrive, and she didn't. So they finally all had to go home. And one woman, she said, well, a lot of them would say that the 3 little dogs at that time would follow them home and continue teaching them. So this woman phoned me the next day and she said, well, the 3 little dogs followed me home as usual, but Candace came too. And she had not met Candace yet. She described her totally, because Candace was a bit of a different color from the others, and she was sort of squarer, and she had a hairier tail, and she described her perfectly. Anyway, the reason she was phoning is the other dogs had been giving her volumes of personal information, and then Candace wanted to get in on the act. And Candace brought up the subject of Buddha, and Candace made it clear that from her perspective, what Buddha did sitting under that tree for so long, being hungry and thirsty and hot, she felt it was a pretty stupid thing to do. So so being the little empath that she was, she said, I was as the wind around his face, for I was freeform then, and did not Francis call the... Oh, I'm sorry, I had to back up. She told the woman she was Buddha's brother, you see. She told the Buddha she was Buddha's brother. So at this point, the woman thought she was losing it. So she phoned me to ask Candace, had she heard right? So I asked Candace, did she heard right? Did you really say you're Buddha's brother? And Candace said, of course she heard right. I speak very clearly. She said, I was as the wind around his face, for I was freeform then, and did not Francis call the wind their brother? And any of you who know the story of St. Francis, who is the patron saint of animals, he always called the sun and the moon and the wind, he called them his brothers and his sisters. So by Candace bringing this gentle breeze around Buddha's face, she felt that she could call him her brother. And then another example to show you what an empath was. On another occasion, somebody had brought a crate of little tiny little kittens. Somebody had dumped them in a paper bag outside the 7-Eleven. So the rescue company got them and she was fostering them. So they were too little to be left at home. They had to have a midday meal. Well, Candace went crazy. She just wanted to be in there and mother the kittens and all the rest of it. So all hope of meditating or animal communication had gone out the wind because she was crying. So there was about 6 of us, and all in the same moment, we all felt that we must open the door and let Candace go in the cage with these 4 little baby kittens. They were very tiny. So we did that. And she went in and she mothered them to death, and the little kittens climbed all over her, and everybody was very happy. And so what the phrase I heard from Candace say as she went in the cage, I heard her say, their cells are crying to my cells and I must help them. And later I asked her if she could tell us about motherhood. And she said, a mother is responsible for life regardless of its form. There were and are tribes who nurture any child in need, not just their own. I am of that tribe. Where there is a need, my cells hear the call. Every cell in my being responded to their cry for help. So that was that one. And then there was another one. She and I were sitting outside the kitchen door on the back step, and there were 2 fences between us and the field where I could see there was a horse standing up, and I could see there were 2 or 3 people and a couple of dogs. And Candace, there was 2 fences between us. There was quite a distance between us. And Candace was standing up and barking. It was not like any bark I ever heard. It was attention, alert, look. And I looked, and a new foal had just been born. She couldn't see it. It was down in the grass, but she felt it. And she said, all life should be welcomed. It is a big decision for life to enter form, and it should be honored. So do we have any comments? Okay, I'll go on to after we had her celebration of life, and we would pick flowers, and some friends would bring their flute and play the flute when we buried the little dog. We would wrap it up in pretty cloths, and sometimes I made a nest of grass clippings or from the pine trees, and it was a celebration. And as I say, 5 or 6 people came, and it was a healing for all the people, all her friends who came too, because everybody had either family members or animals who had recently died, and they could cry with everybody all together. Well, there was a celebration. So anyway, when Candace went, I had a very good friend, Melissa, who told me what she had envisioned. She saw Candace going over a little tiny rainbow bridge, a little Candace-sized rainbow bridge. And on the other side, she simply dispersed into waves of energy, which appeared a gentle flowing movement in the flowers and the waters. She said, that's how I knew where they were, because her cat went with her. They expanded vibrationally in all directions until they simply were no more. They merged and became one with nature. And then one day she told me, now I am free form. I really like being free form, but I can visit if I want to in consciousness. I can think myself wherever I want to be. Do I have a job? Does the air have a job? I am part of beauty and silence and motion, and I am in all things. And then a greater, more encompassing part of her took over and said, she is far more than Candace. She is an emanation of God's breath herself. Comments. Comment time. So the little kitten in the picture, yes, it doesn't look so little. The thing is, for the next 2 weeks, the person who was fostering it brought them back to visit Candace. So you can see how happy she is when the kittens were getting bigger and they came to visit her. And it ended up a happy story. 2 little kittens were adopted together and the foster kept 2 of them. And it's an amazing thing, but I've only right now realized that Buddha was in that picture.
Yeah. I think there is a connection there.
That's amazing. And I'd never noticed that before now. And here she is when trying to get into the little kittens. Actually, this was the following week when they're already bigger, because they were littler. Oh, the bottom picture on the left, that's her with the little baby tiny kittens. That was her very first time in with the kittens.
Mm.
Well, this is everything against what I have thought about any relationship between cats and dogs. All my cats were ferociously fighting any dog that would come in their vicinity. But this goes back to the saying that my father used to say, you have to become the lover of thy enemy, meaning you have to love thy enemy like yourself. So this just demonstrates how Candace achieved that actually.
And see,
it was
that's
not even an enemy.
and that's what Gretel was doing in the astral worlds, teaching the dogs and cats to get over their fears and to love each other. And all the little dachshunds were very food oriented. Here is a lovely young man who came for something, and Candace wants his sandwich.
Yeah.
And she would have this weird way of sleeping in her dog bed with her head hanging out on the ground.
It was too heavy with a lot of thoughts. Yeah. And I think I want to comment on this when it's the time to transition and to continue on your soul path. What you mentioned, Sananjaleen, I can say that for me, that was the biggest exam in my life on a spiritual level, to let my father go on his own path. And when he had cancer, which was inoperable according to all the experts, and I was, still agonizing. And when we could even say a prayer from beginning to end, and he knew the words of the good prayer from beginning to end, and he could not speak anymore. He didn't know my name, he didn't know anybody's name, he could not even say a full sentence because of the pain and everything else. He could still say his prayer. This thing about a friend of mine whom you know very well, Joanna, said, has it crossed your mind that it's time for this soul to transition so that they can take another shape or form and be on the path, on its own path? So don't try to stop this. And I really appreciate how you asked, you prayed, you meditated, but also you asked the soul of the dog whether it's time to go or not. So for me, that was a very hard lesson, and for you, it was very natural, at least the way you tell the story.
But my first experience with Tiggy was not. That's why I can tell people what to do, because I went through it. It took me 18 months to let Tiggy go. Tiggy was very old. And Tiggy kept having these near-death experiences. She kept going, I'm going. Oh, you just bought another roast chicken? Well, I think I'll stay around a little bit longer. Tiggy did have roast chicken.
Yeah.
But anyway, so finally, obviously the day came. But I was sort of forced into it by a couple of sleepless nights. And anyway, after Tiggy went, Loreli gave me one hell of a lecture. She said Tiggy was in grace. Tiggy could have gone anytime she wanted to. She was teaching you to take responsibility.
That's very powerful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And because I went through it, I can share that with people without criticizing them,
Yeah.
Because it's terribly difficult.
Yeah.
And with Laurie, another thing you can ask for those of you that have animals, but you can do this with your human too, is to ask them to give you a sign. And with Loreli, the vet gave me a week to choose the day. But I asked Loreli to give me a sign because they said the tumor would rupture. I asked Loreli to give me a sign. And after we'd done what she wanted, had that meditation of seeing her dancing in the light so she could open the vortex for all the animals, I had a bunch of people here, and I came into the room. They were all outside. Loreli was sitting in the middle of the room, and she was sitting in an impossible position. She was sitting with her head totally, I can't even do it. She had her head totally resting on her shoulder, like it was broken. And I said, oh, Loreli, that's the sign, isn't it? And she straightened up. And the next morning, as soon as they opened, I called the vet to come and help her get out of her body. So you can ask for a sign, and it works a lot of the time. And that's like Tiggy, they're teaching me, it's my response. Anyway, I'll try and race through the next couple because we've only got 2 more to go, then I'll try and be quick.
We're enjoying this, by the way, so
well, thank you, because I know
I know everybody's enjoying it. Thank you.
So Primrose, so I was without a dog all winter. I was without a dog all winter, and then you get used to being without a dog, you know, not having to be home on time and all that. I wasn't really sure that I wanted another, but meanwhile, two more had been found for me. Olivia and Primrose. Again, it was the mother and daughter combo. And Primrose was adorable and fun-loving. She was very little. She was extraordinarily like Lorelei to look at. And although I never ever thought she was Lorelei, I could be looking at her and I would see Lorelei looking through her eyes. And I came to the understanding that because there was no dog here to teach Primrose the ropes, that they had come to an agreement that Lorelei would come in and tell her what was what. And after a while, Lorelei stopped doing that. I used to joke. I used to look at Primrose and say, "Get out of there, Lorelei." And anyway, so that went on for a little bit. But the thing about Primrose was, again, she went to Spirit Song in her dream, and Spirit Song phoned me, and she said, "Primrose has come to gather up all the messages." Well, neither of us had any idea what that meant. It's true she was running all over the garden in all directions. Was she checking on messages the other dachshunds had left? I didn't know what she was doing. Then, Steve, you want to say something?
No, I'm just stretching. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So then I read in a book or somewhere, I read that wherever we walk, wherever we go, we leave an imprint of the DNA, our DNA on the land. The land holds the imprint or patterning of that which has been. And so from all the little dachshunds, all their DNA everywhere, they had left all this information. They had left all these seeds or messages, and everyone was a code, a light code, a sacred geometry of information or instruction, inactive until something brings them to life. And Primrose, her presence or frequency, was the catalyst, the activation necessary for their release into her being or awareness of these codes and messages. Individual electronic patterns of light, unique geometric patterning stamped or imprinted with her own. What she did with them was a mystery. So then I finally figured maybe she didn't do anything with them. Maybe she simply enabled the release of all this info into the atmosphere where it would be available to anybody. And then last year or this winter, I read in a magazine, an animal magazine, I read analysis of genetic material, DNA, shed by animals' footprints into their environment was being used to track and identify polar bear populations. Samples from footprints, DNA from epidermal cells shed by their paws, gave evidence to identify individual bears. So it seems Primrose was way ahead of the researchers. Any comment, Nevenka?
Well, the DNA technology to be able to sequence and identify animals like that, I think that technology is only about 18 years, the one that's widely available. So yeah, these animals were way ahead of their time. Yeah. It was possible to do it before 2006, but it would take enormous resources, human and technology wise. So yeah, but I think this thing about DNA and imprints, I know that the master Ben Saduno says that our hair and nails, which contain our DNA, our information, should be collected, should be burned, and that should be taken to very high mountain spots. It should not be thrown everywhere. I think that's what I read somewhere, and that's what many people practice. So don't leave your DNA anywhere.
Primrose would probably agree with you.
Yeah. And that's what fascinates me also with Gretel, that she just took her whole physical form, DNA and everything with her.
Heidi, yeah.
Heidi.
Yeah, it was incredible. And so, and I heard Primrose is an activator. She has come to activate you. The time is now to share and tell, which is interesting because I'm doing it. She enjoyed her task in dog form and delights in the mystery she creates. She activated my neighbor up the road. She would go to her in her dreams all the time. And my poor neighbor was not up to this, you know. Lorelei came to me in my dream again last night and told me this, that, and the other. Anyway, she did quite a lot. And she made it very, very clear that she was my neighbor's guide. She told her very clearly. It came through in one of our workshops. So anyway, I'll skip to by now we're calling these celebrations of life, I'm calling it the earthing of Primrose. And we had the same group of friends, and the same neighbor always came down and dug the space in the earth underneath the pine trees, and we lined it with flowers and pine needles and everything. Anyway, on this occasion with Primrose, the horses, there's as you know, Nevenka, there's horses out there in the field, and they came down to the fence, and the three of them stood and watched everything. And as we put the earth over Primrose, one of them leaned over the fence and neighed loudly, saying farewell to their little friend. It was just extraordinary. And then, after everybody went, I was gazing at the sunset, and I was just wondering, where is Primrose? Where did she go? And I heard the words, she is beyond the sun that you see. And I simply sensed the words love beings. And I felt motion and movement, but I just couldn't grasp what it was all about. And so later I heard, what did we tell you? Primrose was love embodied, cosmic essence in form. And I was simply overwhelmed by the power of love again. And I had to stop everything. And then later I heard Primrose transitioned from embodied consciousness into solar consciousness. Particle function life returning to a wave function state of consciousness. And I began to comprehend that these love beings, I began to understand them as a force field, the unified field, and they rearranged themselves to create a portal opening, allowing her to flow back to source, to welcome her home, to their cosmic force field of divine love. And I had this vision of Primrose as the tiniest dot, wandering, entering into the vastness. And the awesomeness, the bravery of this tiniest of specks entering into this vastness was so overwhelming, I had to arise and gather Kleenex. And I simply heard the words, returning to love is, and I just couldn't get any more because I was just so overwhelmed by the feeling of love. And then I found this beautiful quote by the master, Peter Derniff. He says, and this was so exactly what it was, true love is so powerful that if you made contact with it, you could hardly support its vibrations. And just a few seconds would be enough for you to remember for all eternity. And that's what happened to me. And then the last little dog was Shotzi. And he was referred to as a miracle dog. And he was with me at the same time as Primrose. And they just bonded totally 100%. When Primrose was outside and wanted to come in, Shotzi knew. And Shotzi would bark and tell me, Primrose wants in. We'd always call Primrose the princess, you see. And Shotzi would always let me know what Primrose wanted next. Well, anyway, when he was offered to me, I already had 3 dachshunds. And he was going to be kept as a show dog, but when he was 18 months old, his breeder discovered he had a heart murmur. So she was very ethical, and she gave him away as a pet dog. And it wasn't expected to bother him till he was about 9 years old. So he kept her on Planet, and it was quite a story. When he was 4 years old, he had major heart problems. And she was able to get him taken by Blacksburg University practically for nothing because he was a support dog for her. And the vet opened him up and discovered that he had about 5 major things wrong with his heart. So he fixed all of them. This little dog was in surgery for 5 hours. He fixed everything, but they didn't expect the little dog, Shotzi, to live more than 2 or 3 months. So every day for a week, the vets and the nurses were carrying him around. He was very spoiled. But anyway, he recovered, and he was referred to as the miracle dog. And he lived with her for another, I think it was 4 years or whatever. And then she returned to spirit. She was an angel. She just couldn't take things anymore. She really was angelic. And so Shotzi came to me, and we loved having him. And Shotzi, so when I was away when she died, and Shotzi and Primrose was staying with a neighbor. So the friend that I was staying with was very psychic. And when I told her what had happened, she said, Helga is all right. Shotzi escorted her to the other side. And I didn't know how he did that. How did he do that? And how did he come back again? But that was a big thing with me, that Shotzi had escorted her to the other side. And when friends had animals or people die, I would say, well, ask Shotzi to come and escort them. And we had, at that time, I was volunteering at the local animal shelter, and we would go and take different dogs out for walks, and I had bonded very strongly with a little dog called Matty. But I couldn't take her home because I had the little dachshunds, and she was not good with other dogs. But she was perfect when I went to visit her and take her for walks and everything like that. Well, anyway, then we were told that she was going to be euthanized. And four other volunteers, all their favorite dogs were all going to be euthanized at the same time. So we all bonded. We never really talked to each other before that. We all totally bonded. We stood in a circle and cried together. And we're still friends. If it hadn't been for that, we would never really have met each other. We're still super friends. So anyway, they told me, they did have the decency to phone me and say it's going to be tomorrow. So the next day, I was driving down the road. They said it was going to be tomorrow at noon. So I was driving down the road, and I called on Shotzi. And I said, Shotzi, will you come and escort Matzi to the other side? So as I was driving down the road, I had this vision of a huge vibrational river was in front of me, a huge vibrational river. And Matty, this little dog, was standing looking at it. I was standing looking at her from behind. And on the other side of the river were hundreds and hundreds of happy dogs, all sizes and breeds. And they were all waiting to meet Matty. So I knew that Matty's pack was waiting to meet her. And when I got home, well, first of all, I asked Shotzi, did you escort her to the other side? And he said, I didn't have to take her all the way. So I thought that he had seen her pack and that he could just leave her in safety. When I got home, there was a message on the telephone machine saying we've postponed it till tomorrow. He didn't have to take her all the way. But meanwhile, Matty and I knew her pack was waiting to meet her. And in the middle of this pack was a big, I would describe it as a golden retriever, just extra gorgeous. It was how I used to see Gretel when she was, it was a dog of light. It was a dog of light. And the thing is, since then, I have, looking over my own notes, which I had totally forgotten, and I don't know if any of you ever read or share the messages from Matthew. It's channeled messages that come every so often of a young boy who channels through his mother. Does anybody ever? It's the only channel material I read, and it's just beautiful. And the mother is Susie. And because of animals, he often talks about animals. I got in touch with her. So we got on this subject, and she has several times seen this dog of light, this great dog of light, and other people have too. So just know that if you have people, humans or animals, you can call upon Shotzi, because what I have recently heard, he's not just an escort. He's one of the, capital T, he's one of the escorts. And I have since learned that this is actually, it's actually, well, Shotzi gave me I'll tell you what Shotzi said about it. It's a specialized unit who created a force field of energy and spirit. You could call it an angel, a blessing from those in canine form to protect and help life in distress, specifically those who have chosen to serve humanity as guards and guide dogs, as well as the people, officers, and medics. This happens anyway, of course, but they specialize, and they're also in service to the service dogs. And I heard Shotzi has retained consciousness of his own essence. And although he may not use his actual Shotzi template again, his own particular essence could be recognized as such. For he is one in service, capital S, to love, ever ready to flow as needed, one of the escorts. And as a dog, I have to mention Shotzi's speciality was cherry tomatoes. And I think you have a photo, Nevenka, of Shotzi eating the cherry tomatoes.
Yeah, I have those.
I jumped around a bit at the end there. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. I was looking for some quotes.
That picture.
Oh, yes.
The previous one, you see the man holding the river? That is Loreli when she was a show dog.
Uh-huh. Okay, beautiful.
That was before she came to me.
Okay.
That's Primrose. And Primrose, this friend that I said she activated, I used to give these energy healing classes called Quantum Touch. And Primrose did not normally jump on the couch. In fact, I didn't know she could jump on the couch. And we had brought the massage table into the big room. And one of the things when you're offering energy healing is if you can make yourself happy, and it lightens the vibration and it makes things come through more strongly. So Laurie was thinking, what can I think of to make me happy? And she heard, open your eyes. And there is Primrose looking at her, because she just adored Primrose. And Primrose came into her dreams. It was just extraordinary. Okay. Here is Shotzi eating the cherry tomatoes. I was working in the garden and I heard these terrible screams. And I ran to see what had happened. And Shotzi had eaten all the little low down cherry tomatoes and he couldn't reach the next layer. But by the time I got my camera, he had figured out how to stand on the wire and reach the next ones. He was crazy about cherry tomatoes. So we buried him with 6 cherry tomatoes. I don't know what the next one is. It may be more tomatoes. Oh, no, okay, we'll go back to Shotzi for the moment. Just let me wrap up on Shotzi. And in one of these animal communication classes we had, somebody, because they would ask the dogs questions, and somebody I didn't know was there, and she had quite a large, she was obviously had quite an important managerial position, and she was having trouble with it. So she asked she had bonded to Shotzi. So she asked Shotzi, what should she do? How could she cope better? And I'm thinking, oh, what does Shotzi know about offices and managerial jobs? Shotzi gave her 3 words: take your tea breaks. Well, apparently she had been working through her tea breaks, but she took Shotzi's advice, and from then on, she took the 20-minute tea break and everything was fine. You could calm down and reorganize. Well, a couple of years later, I met her in the grocery store, and she said she was working at home now, and she'd had a very stressful moment, and Shotzi had appeared on her computer screen and said, "Take your tea break." Well, I was for years, for months, a couple of years, I boggled my mind. How could Shotzi appear on her screen? Let alone the fact that he said that. How could he appear on her screen? So anyway, then I met her again 2 or 3 years later, and she just happened to mention that a picture of my garden was still her screensaver. So that made me realize something that, who was it? Loreli told us. That gave him entrance to her energy field. It made it easier for him to come through. So be careful, y'all. What you have is your screensaver. No snakes, eh? So anyway, when Shotzi went, it was evening. It was evening. Oh, because what happened with Shotzi 6 weeks after Primrose, because every day we had him, we knew it was a miracle because of this heart thing, but he lived to be 12 and a half years old. He was expected to die when he was 4. And it was interesting. I had all his paperwork, and I wrote to the veterinary surgeon who had worked on him at the time. And I said, "You might like to know how wrong you were." And then I joked. And then I joked and said, "You must have done a wonderful time." So as time went on, I stayed in touch with him because I figured that Shotzi would really, really be an interesting case for him to know about, that he had lived to be 12 and a half in good condition. And he is now quite a top surgeon at a university. And so that was interesting.
So are they now doing a study in how tomatoes can prolong life?
Oh, well, Nevenka, that reminds me, there was one occasion when Primrose went crazy and she was out in the garden eating all these dandelion flowers. She was eating all the dandelion flowers she could find. So I Googled dandelion flowers and I followed suit. I picked all the dandelions myself and put them in my salad. I think they can help your liver or kidneys or something.
Yeah, the cleanser.
But anyway, back to Shotzi. When his time came, so suddenly I had come in from the garden. It was about 4 o'clock, and I was at the computer, and Shotzi was in his little bed, and suddenly he got up from his little bed, and he came to show me that his tummy was distending, it was bloating, and his breathing was quickening. So I just made a quick telephone call to the vet to tell him I was bringing an emergency, and it was only 4 miles away, and I took him there immediately. And the vet said he's in heart failure now. And she was able to let him go before he suffered any. And all my friends gathered that very night for the earthing of Shotzi. And so there was an incredibly beautiful sunset. And all the horses, this time they did not come down to the fence. They stood silhouetted against the sunset. It was just beautiful, just beautiful. And so we all had ceremony for Shotzi. And after they went, I continued to gaze at the gorgeous sunset. It was just a gorgeous, glowing kaleidoscope of rainbow colors. And I said, "Where is he? Where did Shotzi go?" And I sensed a vast unit of energy, a force field of goodness that could project past itself here, there, and whatever needed, in whatever form is most appropriate. Shotzi flowed into, he returned. He became part of this great presence of golden goodness. And that's when he told me that they were specialized units and that they specialized in the people and animals who were in service to others. So there are some of the horses. And this fine horse is called Rambo, and he's eating all my flowers. And he's actually, he belongs to my neighbor who's a veterinarian and did this 100-mile endurance ride. The horses, they ride 100 miles in one day or so many hours. And he has actually, that horse has competed all over the world. He's gone too now. His name was Rambo. And Rambo, oh, he competed in Dubai and many, many countries. And he did it on my flowers.
Yeah.
And then I was going on to mention animals as healers. Well, we know that in so many different ways, above all as emotional healers. Shotzi was a healer. He was a therapy dog. And I wanted to mention one time I was on my computer and I was looking, it was when we had all those terrible, terrible oil spills. And I had just seen a picture of a beautiful, beautiful beach in Florida that was covered in oil spills and dead dolphins. And it just took me by surprise and I just burst into tears. And immediately I felt Shotzi's little nose on my toe and he was in my lap licking my face. And it made me cry all the harder because I thought of all the times he had done this for his previous person. Anytime he saw her crying, he would have gone to her. And also, being healers, you see, caring for them can offer structure in our life, meaning I'm needed. And they can help maintain the balance during life changes and that continuity. I'm seeing a lot of local kids going off to college. Well, the little dog to come home to is continuity. It's still there, you know. And I think Nevenka had something to share about the cats being, I guess, emotional support. Or no, well, you had something. We shared another thing about cats, but should I do
Yes.
it?
Yes, we do. There is that picture. Here it is.
Oh, yes. Well,
Yes.
yes, that's something else.
You
Yeah,
can
yes.
see here, it's hard, but you can see the cat on top of the car. And I cropped it in from a much bigger picture.
Yes, good. You cut out that. Well, what was
Yes.
interesting about this photo, a neighbor took it and she owned that cat and she wanted to take a photo of my car with the Sananda tags. And look how clearly that shows in the rest of the picture. She was just taking a photo. Oh, she was taking a photo of the little white cat sitting on the car. That's all she was doing. And this is what came in the photo. And then she lost the photo for a long, long time. And then she found it. This is email. And do you see what the cat is looking at? Do you see that great, huge dog? Can you see a picture of a Great Dane? It's a great big black and white dog in front of the cat, just its head and front feet. Here, well, you can't see where I'm pointing. Up to, yes, there. You see that?
Yeah.
Well, that picture was not in the original picture. That picture did not appear until that dog died. And for anybody who does read the book, Janice, you read the book, that's Bella. And Bella is mentioned several times in the book. And when she died, she belonged to this person who owns the white cat. And she appeared in that picture too. But the story, Rebecca, why don't you read it to give a break?
Yeah, so the story is that you received a photograph of these two cats, Bandit and Rubicon, and their person wanted to know why is it that these two cats are in her life and what is their purpose. So you asked for an answer and who would tell you something about this. And then the voice came and said, well, we are one. We are star-born and we both came down to the same silver shaft. I feel they don't really want to talk about mundane or earthly things. We don't. We are star cats. I had noticed a flash of light in the photograph, doing our time on Earth. You mean like time in jail? No, our unit, the group we're from, always has a certain number or percentage of us on Earth at any given time. What do? We help balance the energies, maintain the equilibrium. Humans are forever upsetting the natural equation with their emotional misunderstandings. We do not dislike our job. We are in acceptance and compassion. We do not dislike our names. Whatever gives our humans pleasure has its effect on us also. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was from you and from the owner, right?
From me,
And
from me.
from you. And then they said, yes, you are welcome. We are star cats.
So you never know who's living with you.
That's right.
So while we're on that, I have a few other things about transition,
Okay.
because I haven't mentioned Olivia at all. Olivia was Primrose's daughter. And Olivia was with us for less than a month when she went, poof, just like that. She just fell in a coma at my feet. She was running all over the garden. She came running back, and she was so happy. She was so happy when she was here, and she came running back, and she just fell and died. And she says, I had to take her to the vet, and she was there for overnight. Do not mourn my departure. I was in no pain. All went as planned. I had ascended prior to the last day. Only the shell remained. Know again that I suffered no pain. I had already left. And I heard Olivia was essence unformed, a passing breeze that served completion for a previous time. And I thought that could apply to so many little babies who die early. A passing breeze that served completion for a previous time. And Emma, now you do have a lot of photos of Emma.
Yes, I'll share.
Emma was not a dachshund. She was a little and she belonged to a neighbor up the road who is she's on tour a lot of the time, away from home a lot of times. And although we go up to the house and feed her cats, this little dog was getting a senior. And so whenever she went away, she let this little dog come and stay with me. So she was like my little dog. So this is Emma. And Emma loved being here and interacting with everybody. And Emma also was love in service for her human, she not only traveled a lot, she had moved places and she'd been divorced and all that kind of stuff. So Emma represented continuity for her. And when she died, I asked her if she could share anything with me. And she said, think of me as light, for I am formless. Think not of me as a little dog, but rather as a specific frequency that you interpret as Emma. And another was a cat, a master cat, and his person got in touch with me and she wanted to know why he had died the way he did. I can't remember now what it was, whether it was an unfortunate death or untimely, but whatever it was, it bothered her. And obviously. And so this is all Emma. Emma was adorable. And the little white dog on the top left, that was a little dog that was staying here too. I do a bit of pet sitting. And the little dogs always love being with each other. So anyway, this cat, it said it was a master cat. It said, so I could choose my death, my style of transition. There comes a time when change is ordered and growth expected. He's referring to his person. I am here to support and nurture that growth, but in a different aspect or form. Her guide and teacher I remain. I shall ever be part of her existence, for I am far more than Springer Cat. I am a part of her very self made manifest. See, that was like Gretel being part of my angel. And then regarding St. Francis, the patron saint of animals again, when I asked Heidi if he was there to greet her, and she says, was Francis there to meet me? It was as though he never left my side. Not so much that he was waiting for me to return, as the experience that I was awakening to my own return from a dream of being away. And then Tiny Mike was a little tiny little pony who belonged to my neighbor. And he was very, very old, very, very tiny. And so again, it was expected that he would die sometime. And it could have been Christmas morning even, he was found lying, he had died in the night, and he had his little nose under my fence. And the thing is, he was facing east. He had died, he'd gone to sleep with his little nose pointing to the east. And this is one of the first messages or verse that I ever received when I was thinking, oh, how can I say some nice words to Jeannie, his owner? And I heard, a beloved pony though he may have been. Oh, see, I thought I could remember it, now I've forgotten it. Beloved, no more an elderly pet pony, beloved though he may have been. Your tiny mite flies free on silver wings, and not alone, for the great herd of the East he knows as his have come to welcome him and take him home. And then I heard that Tiny Mike was a heartbeat in the heart of God. And then the last one is a little kitten. It was a little tiny kitten that belonged to a young girl. And he was a very adventurous young kitten. He was always full of fun. He was always doing things he shouldn't. And evidently he lost track of his 9 lives. And he lost the 10th one. And of course, she was very upset. And she was telling me all about this. So I heard 4-digit, dancing through life, in form or out, it matters not to me. Digit flies free, a sound within the silence that came to earth as raindrops do, a blessing to be known within the moment and released in love.
I love how you always come back to love and how you've experienced love and light through this communication with the animals. And to me, that's like a communication with kindred souls. Just like in the lecture, Kindred Souls, it says that the kindred soul is in the divine world, and it does not mean somewhere far away, that near and far are relative concepts. And these are your friends whom you love, who loved you and came to be your companions and mentors, and you supported each other. So in a way, love is also the first embodiment of Jesus Christ. And in this way, when the master Peter Danov says, each of you must hold in your mind your kindred soul or kindred spirit. Who is this spirit? It is Jesus Christ. All kindred souls appeared after Christ, meaning after love appears in our hearts. Christ is the first kindred soul in the cosmos. By striving towards Christ, your kindred soul will come to you. So in your meditations, all these kindred souls, or the manifestation of the kindred soul has come to you, and I'm incredibly grateful to you for sharing all these stories. To me, it's profoundly meaningful, and I think I'm gonna watch this video again and again until I internalize everything. So.
Well, thank you, Nevenka. That was beautiful, that last bit that you read too. And I'm sorry it went on so long. Thanks, some of you for sticking it out. Nevenka was supposed to jump in and tell me when to stop.
No, it was so beautiful that it was very hard to jump in and stop. But if somebody wants to share something, and that would be great. Or we can also play a song. I wanted to show your garden, Sananjaleen, because to me that garden is an epitome of serenity and a way to think about one's own spiritual path. So there's a picture actually that I wanted to share. We took this picture about 3 years ago of you and Svetla, the violinist. So this was Rosa, right?
Yes.
Who came and just sat. This was quite a moment. And then you gave me Rosa to take care of her, and I was so focused on taking care of her that even when her owner came, I would not release her because I was focused on Rosa and not on the owner, and the fact that I have to give her to the owner until you told me so.
That was wonderful.
Yeah. But thank you so much. This was incredible. And I wanted to, when I asked you which music and which song you liked, you told me that it's the March of Light Forces. And we now all realize that the light forces are marching with you in all these shapes and forms. But also to play this song, which was recorded in your garden so that people can have an idea about your garden. Is it okay to play it now?
Oh, yes, lovely.
Okay.
And it's so nice that many of you there, Ardella and Tanner and Nevenka and Steve and Janice, you have all been here in the garden.
Yeah, it's simply magical to be there. But now I understand even more why it's so magical, because some of these great meditations and visions of yours, they're simply from like meetings between and across different dimensions. So it's very, very meaningful.
And also, of course, all the years we've done Panurhythmy, that raises the vibration too. And all the other wonderful people who've been here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sananjaleen.
Thank you all.
Thank you. It was really incredible. Incredible.
And that is a beautiful little video.
Yes, and she plays magnificently. It's I think the arrangement is by Philip Stoitsev because she plays on 2 or even 3 strings at the same time, which is very rare. Just like you expertly are able to tell us the story of how you've experienced these interdimensional meetings with the animals of with the souls of the animals and the messages. So I'm profoundly grateful to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity
Yes.
of sharing.
Okay.
And you're all invited to come visit. Home of the Dachshunds. The fake Dachshunds. What about that? They're all fake Dachshunds.
Yeah, I love them all. I cannot distinguish many of them, but I love them all. Yeah. Beautiful, truly beautiful. Should I play your favorite song then, and then we end with the song? Yeah.
Well, that would be nice. Dramatic ending. Yes. Okay. And we'll all just fade out after that.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Just
Thank
like
you. Yes.
in your meditations.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you again. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. You are love and light.
Takes one to know one.
And thank you all for joining. And thank you, Janice and Winnie, for staying until the end.